Let's get the latest now on the Israeli ceasefire. 11 more hostages were released by Hamas overnight and have safely arrived into Israel. And this comes just hours before the 4-day truce between Israel and Hamas was due to expire, but both sides agreeing to a 2-day extension. Well, among the 11 released last night are Sharon Aloni Cunio and her 3-year-old twin daughters, Emma and Yuli. Sharon's husband, David, and his brother are still believed to be held captive. For many families of those kidnapped by Hamas on October the 7th, the painful wait, though, remains far from over. Well, let's get the latest from the defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Always fabulous to see you. Robert, just the fact that this has been extended another 2 days, huge amount of hope for all those involved. Lots of concerns that they're not being able to get the aid in as fast as they would like. Certainly that's what Antonio Guterres has been saying. But what have we learned from the hostages so far about the conditions and the chances, perhaps, of more being released in the coming days?
Very difficult. Some of the conditions seem to have been absolutely ghastly. There's a strange report today in the mainstream Israeli press that Mr. Sinwar, who is the head of and the brain of Hamas, came into one of the tunnels, talked to hostages in absolutely fluent, as it was put it, unaccented Hebrew, which he'd learnt from when he was detained by the Israelis and in prison. Where does this take us? I think very little intelligence will be coming, actually, because it has been such a disorientating experience. Blindfold, taken down tunnels, split up. And so the Israeli army the IDF will be taking sanctions about it. But the crucial agency, which we're beginning to hear a lot more about, is Military Unit 8200, which really is the surveillance and intelligence unit. And rather shockingly, they were told to take the holiday weekend off on the Yom Kippur celebrations around October the 7th. That is the worst, because it now appears that operatives, and they're very, very highly prized of 8200. It's not quite special forces, it's much more. And once you're in it for life, 8200. A year ago, a lady officer, unnamed, has come out and said, "We told you something like this was going to happen." Plus, we had yesterday the reports that there were at least 3 major exercises of something like the massacres we saw on October the 7th. So there's a lot coming up. And that's one of the things that will happen now, is that politics is coming into more and more of what the Israelis are going to do. And the real question is whether they can extend again. If they don't extend again, and again it's the more liberal wing of the Israeli media, they're speculating that they may not get the remaining hostages out at all.
Might not get them at all. I mean, the pressure on Netanyahu, as we've seen these emotional pictures of hostages being reunited with family members, has really driven that home. Certainly international pressure as well. But how does this ever get resolved when you do have Hamas saying, we want the destruction of Israel, Israel saying we want the destruction of Hamas? I mean, it's an unsolvable problem.
I hate to be self-referential, as they say. I looked at a clip because of some work that I'm working on about wicked problems. And it's me talking to you several months ago about wicked problems. Problems that, as you rightly say, the paths of solution do not coincide. In fact, they cut each other out. I'm afraid Gaza is looking that. Ukraine is beginning to look like that. And there are big issues like climate change, which you've been discussing, as well as migration. Back to Gaza. This is the problem. Nobody has an answer. And as we go into the next phase, and the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have made it absolutely clear, and they're in the driving seat, they want to fight on, otherwise there's no chance of defeating, I would say just thwarting, Hamas. And that brings up terrible consequences, because you've got nearly 2 million people there. Are you going to fight through them? And as the New York Times is commenting this morning with great expertise, you can't just drop bombs on them. And I think that's where Blinken and Biden are involved in it. Meanwhile, they seem to be taking their eye off the ball in Ukraine. And they are coming together as a sort of perfect storm at the moment.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a bit of a day for cliches.
No, but I know what you mean. And obviously we have to focus also on the death toll in in the Gaza Strip between, 13 and 15,000.
That's generally agreed now,
and that in itself produces a generation of people with hate-filled hearts, surely.
Which has been going on too long. And this is the thing that everybody is saying, and it's the message that the Americans, Macron, particularly, and the Brits, who do have a shout in this with the Germans, they're really going to be important in this, in saying, look, you two peoples are going to have to live together. This is the thing that's very difficult to get across, because they're, as you rightly say, and for understandable motives, that they are entrenched in their opposition to each other. And the thing that is really worrying some of the Israeli reservists, is that it's such a dehumanized process that you don't see on either side a child or a bereaved mother as a human being.
Yeah. Or Antonio Guterres echoing that thought as well. Robert Fox, really interesting to get your analysis. Thanks very much indeed.